So one thing you absolutely must do before you go for your software developer interview is to make sure that you've got some decent questions that you can ask the employer, because generally when you get to the end of an interview, you'll ask the question yourself, have you got any questions for us? And you don't really want to be asking questions that you should already know the answer to, such as how much is the pay, what are the hours, what sort of technologies am I going to be working with? You want to ask what I call a golden question. So a golden question is something that shows some insight into the company and shows that you've really done your research and that you're really interested in working for that particular company. I'm pretty sure I've been offered jobs in the past before simply by asking a really good golden question. So there are lots of different types of golden question that you can ask, but one thing you can do, especially if you're doing research about the software and the company itself, is if you notice anything a little bit unusual or something unique on the site or the app, and you can then reference that in your interview and mention that, and it'll show that you've really done your research into the software that the company produces. So for example, we were looking at this particular app a few days ago. And let's say you're going through all of the HTML source and the JavaScript source and seeing if you can actually find anything that's a little bit interesting. Sometimes you might find a security flaw, or you might find a styling improvement that could be made. So those sort of things are really important because you can reference that in your golden question and saying, I noticed there's a security flaw on your website, for example. How do you approach security as a company, and start that as a conversation, and that will just show that you've really done your research into the company itself and are interested in the well-being of the company. So for this particular example, there's one thing that I did notice. We're going through the HTML source and there's pretty standard things there. We've got like an Angular app set up, and in the sources folder we've got all of the Angular code, but it's been minified, so it's really difficult to kind of see anything unique in there. But if we go to the network tab, this is always a good, interesting place to start. If you look at all of the Ajax requests that are being made, you'll usually find some interesting things in here. So for example, we've got the config that's been provided by an endpoint, so that's fairly standard. But we've also got this other endpoint here that someone sent a request to, and it's something on the domain, and it's simply called George Foreman. So that's a bit strange, and it's a bit of a curious one, but that'd be a really unique thing to ask about in your interview. So when you get to the end of the interview and you're asked for your golden question, then simply you could say, I noticed this API call to the George Foreman endpoint. Is there any relevance to that, or is that a mistake, or is that just someone having a bit of a laugh? So by asking that question, we're showing that we've researched the company, we've found a particular app that's running, we've also looked through all of the source and the network requests, and we found something a little bit weird, and we think that maybe that shouldn't be there, or maybe there's a strange reason why that is there. So that's just an example of something that you could ask in your interview, but as mentioned, it could be something simple as the way the styling has been done, or also it could be a security issue, or maybe there's some errors on the console, for example. So anything like that would form the basis of a good golden question and provide you with a bit of a jumping off point into talk about that area of the company's software. So there you go. Next time you're researching a company for an interview, look for that unique thing, that golden question, and you're sure to have something interesting to talk about at your interview. So that's it for this tutorial. Make sure you stay tuned for more web dev tips.